You know, it's about that time of year again, when winter is winding down and it's getting warmer outside. And that means people are saying it's time to touch grass. But I'm a gamer. The only way I know how to touch grass is right here. But the question is, which Mario games are the best ones to do this in? Which of these games has no grass at all, which have some grass, and which have a whole field to run around in? Let's find out. But for Super Mario Bros., not a great sign to start this one off. The standard ground in the first level is more of a dirt or brick texture. There are some bushes or hills in the background, but those aren't things to touch. And now this game kind of follows a specific level pattern of each world being ground, then underground, sky, and castle. And pretty much the only place we see grass is on these platforms in the sky themes. So it's only possible to show up in a quarter of all the levels. But you know what? Even that's not the case, because there are some level 3s where those platforms are just mushrooms, and occasionally still just dirt. All of this to say, I think there's only some grass in this game. And now to the lost levels. And if we play the All-Stars version for this, we have a lot more grass to touch because now it's all over the ground theme. Even for levels that have different themes, grass is still included in between those sections. And the same green platforms from the last game still exist. Not only that, but look at this, grass on the bridges. What kind of sorcery is going on here? Sure, there are some levels that are snow-themed or castles that have no grass at all, but you can't expect it to be in every single part of the game. I think just being able to know that there's always going to be a green line like this close by is great. I don't know if it's going to get much better than this with any of these games, so I'm moving this guy all the way to the top because grass is all over this game. And if you're happy with that result, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and no one will tell you to touch grass ever again. Let's continue. Mario Bros. 2 seems promising right out of the gate. Some green hills to fall onto, followed by a long stretch of grass to run across. This continues throughout the level, as well as the next few, but the problem is that this is where themes for different worlds started to pop up. So World 2 is completely filled with sand. Ew. But this one follows kind of in every other system. So after this, there's more grass. Then the next world, it's all cold and icy, and we're back to even more grass. So overall, I think there's still a good amount here. Definitely a few stretches with no grass at all, but for everywhere there is, I think there is plenty to touch here. Mario Bros. 3 is another game where the main ground at the start is very grassless, so we could imagine it'll feel similar to the first game. Sure, the levels aren't structured in the same way, but that almost makes it worse because it feels seemingly random when this green land is gonna pop up, and there were only a handful of levels when it did. Some worlds even look like it's filled with grass on the map, only to actually be filled with a bunch of pipes inside. Quite the disappointment from this game. I expected better. This is not the place I would want to go to find grass lying around. There is a very small amount here. Sadly, Super Mario Land is not that much better because we start on sand immediately. Thank goodness for the color so I could figure that out. But even with that in mind, I still had trouble figuring out what surfaces are. Like this green stuff, is that grass or are we on top of a tree? Because in that case, they would be leaves. Well, no matter what the answer is, this game does us no favors. Just a bunch of blocks and weird surfaces everywhere, that is not what we're looking for. I am kind of surprised at this result, but when taking a close look, there really is nothing at all. Get this one out of here. On to Super Mario World, and now we're back to having at least a ground setting that has grass on top. The only problem is that it's used in the first 2 levels, but for everything else down the road, there's so many other themes that grass just seems to take a back seat. You might find the occasional spot of it showing up, but it's rare to see it more than once in any given world. Just goes to show how diverse everything is. I will say though, grass interestingly gets its redemption all the way at the end in the special world, because most of them do feature this ground with the grass on top. I think with that last detail in mind, it should bring the amount just up to average. In Mario Land 2, once again, we start on grass here, so at least there's something to get us going. The intro level is a good start, but I'm struggling to figure out where else to find grass. Tree Zone and Pumpkin Zone are just full of dirt. Macro Zone is too close to the lava. Mario Zone is just inside a giant robot. And Space Zone has some grass in the level leading up to it, I guess, but none in the main zone, obviously. So I guess Turtle Zone has the most, but that's not saying much because there's still too much water here to have a whole field field around. It's better than nothing, but what am I really supposed to do with this one? There's only some grass around here. All right, let's go to Mario 64. Here, it should be a little bit easier to visualize all of the areas to find the most grass. Well, there's outside the castle and the hub world for one thing, but then the only two stages I can think of is Bob-omb Battlefield and Tiny Huge Island. Basically, every other stage just has some kind of theme completely separate from that, which is unfortunate because those two stages I mentioned, there's a ton of grass in those individually. Look at all of this to run around in. Because of this, I struggled to figure out where this one should go, but when thinking about how many stages are in this game, there really is a pretty small amount in total. On to Mario Sunshine, and when I was first thinking about this game, I was like, oh, it's just a bunch of beach levels. There's gonna be nothing here. Well, I was very much mistaken because the amount of green grass here is insane. There are some levels that are just covered with it, and maybe some that don't have grass on ground level, but it's at least always there to look at on the hills. Is all of this the cream of the crop when it comes to grass? I like to think that it might be. I'm amazed at how much there is. It is seriously all over this one. New Super Mario Bros. Also pleasantly surprised me. I thought just one theme in these levels was gonna have grass again, and then it would switch to underground, sky, and castle just like the original. To be fair, it does do that, but there is still a large amount of grass here, and a good amount of grass in other themes. Look, there's actually grass worked into the desert levels and the water levels. Sure, there are some points where we see nothing at all, but that's a given. I really like the effort that was made to have as much grass as possible, so I feel like there is plenty of it here. Based on the theme of Mario Galaxy, this one might surprise you. First of all, there is grass by Peach's castle in the opening, but more importantly, even when we go into space, there's still quite a bit of it. There's grass on the observatory leading to the Terrans, and a lot of grass shown in the first two galaxies there. If you look through the game as a whole, though, you'll notice that they're not all winners, as they do try to keep their own amazing space themes. But again, you should be able to always count on at least some grass for every dome, so we're gonna put this one in average. For New Super Mario Bros. Wii, I'm sure you'll all be very surprised to find that we start on grass in this game as well. That makes sense. It's literally the theme of World 1 in this series, so we should be seeing a decent amount of it here. And we do, but not as much as I would have liked. Also, what's slightly insulting is that every other world maintains its theme throughout basically the whole thing, so grass just never randomly pops up. Well, there are some exceptions to that, like in a small part of World 4, a couple levels in World 5, and most surprising, World 7. Just some grass up in the clouds because why not? This one is a huge disappointment after the last New Soup game. There really is so little here that I gotta put this one all the way down in the some category. In Galaxy 2, a lot of what I said about Galaxy 1 can be applied here, because there's quite a few galaxies with grass on them, and the ones that do have a lot on them. Some standouts for this are Yoshi Star, Fluffy Bluff, and Tall Trunk. With this in mind, I can't realistically put this one too low, but still, the majority of the galaxies here have absolutely no grass whatsoever throughout the whole thing. This especially applies to the back half of the game, where it all just seems to go extinct. I'm still putting this one in average, but it's got a lot to be desired. Okay, things start to get a bit weirder in 3D Land, because all of the stages in this game are much more random than before. One world could have a certain theme to it, but none of the levels necessarily have to follow it, so it's not predictable at all. Sometimes that is nice for a game, but it also leads to grass, again, getting left out of the mix. There's like the first level of Worlds 1 and 2 that I can think of, and then all of these wonderful grassy plains go away. There's a couple points here that made me think it could redeem itself, but then there's so many stretches of other themes we don't care about, and when seeing how much grass there could be in other games, there's no way this can go any higher than just some. New Super Mario Bros. 2 might actually be easier to identify because on the Mario Wiki for this game, I can check to see what is the main theme for each level, and turns out there's only 4 levels in the entire game that have a grass theme. 3 of them are in the first world, and the last one is in the last world, World Star. Now sure, there's other stages that feature a bit of grass in them, and other themes in general that have grass, like the jungle, for example. But would you believe me if I told you there were only 3 of those? I still feel like with this in mind, nothing is ever going to beat that original 2D Mario experience we had. There's just some in this game also. Well, we got one more game, New Super Mario Bros. U, to try to change that. But that's going to be pretty difficult because guess what? This game was exactly the same as the previous one. Probably not too surprising when considering what series we're talking about. I mean, 2 and U were literally released in the same year. But yeah, there's 3 grass stages in World 1 to keep with that theme, and then it never goes back to it again, so there's just one more in the Star World. However, I will say, this game does better at incorporating grass into the other themes. Like, there's some at the beach, a lot more in the forest, and even quite a bit in a lot of the sky levels. At first, I thought this would be going in the same low tier, but you know what? I am a lot more impressed at how the grass was worked in, so I'll move this one up to average. For Mario 3D World, it's difficult to keep track of this one because once again, for each world, only the first level actually tries to be on theme. Then everything else feels like it could be anything. So I can't really say that there's a system for how I went through and checked this game, but I will say I spotted a lot more grass here than I was expecting. Each world had multiple grassy stages in it, and some of them had quite a lot within it. It made me question where to put it because while there are a good handful of these stages, there's a lot in total for this game. So there's also many that have no grass at all. It seems like a fair ranking for this would be right in the center in average. The Super Mario Run. Okay, I'm only gonna look at this game simply because it's on the tier list, but I won't spend too much time on it because I know basically nothing about this game. So there's 6 worlds and 3 grass stages in total, not counting the how to play course. So there's not that many of them in the theme we're looking for, and it appears every other theme has no grass worked in, which is unfortunate. A small game and a small amount of grass. Super Mario Odyssey. All right, let's do this. How many kingdoms in this game have grass in them? So the first ones that come to mind are, of course, Cascade and Wooded. These are pretty solid inclusions, and not gonna lie, there's a massive amount of it in these 2 places. There's also quite a bit in Mushroom Kingdom, which makes a lot of sense, but is that it? Yes, for the green grass anyway. In basically any other game, if something was a different color, it wasn't grass. But for areas like Cap Kingdom and Lake Kingdom, it's actually still there, just a different shading. There's also some other kingdoms where grass isn't there mainly, but there's still a section where it exists. There's even a lot of it in Metro Kingdom, which is a little surprising. There may not be the most out of every game, but after everything we've gone over, I really like what I see for grass here. There is plenty of it to go around. Bowser's Fury should be pretty simple. All we gotta do is a quick lap around Lake Lapcat and see how many of these sections have grass in them. A good start over in the beginning with all of this yellow grass, interestingly enough. There's also some on the next 2 islands just to make things a little better. And honestly, when comparing it to the other games, that already covers a lot of this one. Now, in the back half of the game, there is unfortunately no grass at all to run around in. Although, I don't know if that matters too much. I can't put this one too high up on the list, but like I said, there's so fewer levels in this game that I think the amount we see here is enough to put this one in average. And for our final game, SMB Wonder, I can't say I understand the setup or layout of these stages very well, but what I can say right off the bat is I see a lot more grass here than I was expecting. It's a completely new type of game, and I suppose because of that, this means no more of only having one grassy stage in a given world. Seriously, I saw this ground texture all over this game, no matter where I traveled to, besides the desert world, that is. So it's sadly not perfect, but still, it's a big game, there's a lot of levels, and there's a ton of grass to touch. So let's finish off this list with a game that has plenty of grass in it. And there you go, we are done. I thought this would be a fun idea, and I really like how this list turned out. Let me know if you would change anything, and leave a like if I should rank any other elements. But for now, that's all I got. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care, everyone.